So Dr. Masaru Emoto, he famously did experiments on water crystals, and people might have seen them all over Instagram or on the web, but basically he did these experiments where if you sent water molecules high vibration, love energy, the crystals would be more like snowflakes. If you sent them shame, anger, bitterness, the crystals would deform. That kind of lends itself to this idea that water is a living molecule. It's not just water as we think of it's inert. It actually is a living, it has a memory to it, or it's affected by frequency.
Yeah.
Is there any sense that your water filters are sort of retaining that more of the wholeness of the water molecule versus, say, plastic, bottled water, or some of this distilled water?
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe there's a way to study that. If you were to look at the structure of the water, I guess under a microscope, as he has done, that'd be super curious to see what it looks like, our water versus a plastic water. I think one thing that alludes to that is this idea of the Trihita Karana in Bali. So the Balinese culture, the roots of Balinese culture is this idea of Trihita Karana, which is this connection to like earth, spirit, God, and there's water temples everywhere in Bali. Water has always been used as a purification method. It's life. Like life is in water, and whether that's the structure or whether that's the microorganisms in the water or the essential minerals, I don't know what that is, but it's such a huge part of Balinese culture that we've often thought, gosh, we need to do a really cool marketing thing here, maybe with one of the water priests, and just have him talk a little bit about that, because I think it'd be fascinating.
Again, there's a slight disconnect there, because water was the original concept of the religion here, right?
Yeah.
Yet there's the disconnect that one of the biggest sources of trash, as we mentioned before, is that the villages will throw the trash into the water system, which then flows down to the ocean. How do we, because there's been a lot of education, and I don't want to get political about it, but like, how do we shift that or reconnect that connection? Because it seems bizarre.
Let me tell you this crazy story. So when I first moved here, before like Terra, I came here to start Terra, right? But I was like volunteering with all the organizations, and Trash Hero was already on the island. This was before Sungai Watch existed. Sungai Watch and I started around the same time, and they're buddies. We're partners. They make products for us. So I go out with Trash Hero, and I'm doing these beach cleanups. And the lovely thing about Trash Hero is they're locally driven. So they usually have like a banjar, a Balinese banjar, that kind of hosts it. And then the Trash Hero team comes, and then they promote it, and people like me come. And we were doing these beach cleanups, and instead of picking up the plastic, like the candy wrappers and water bottles, they'd pick up the leaves and the sticks and all the organic waste.
Yeah.
And if you've driven through Balinese villages, you see them sweeping up, like they pick up every flower. And I was like, that doesn't register as trash. Like the inorganic stuff didn't register as trash. And so there's this huge education that has to be done.
Right.
But there's some really great groups now that are doing this. Like Balinese government's a bit more progressive, and so they're really trying to get this education into the schools and into homes. And there's some cute little nonprofits that are doing the same thing. But boy, did that blow my mind.
Yeah. You see it writ large when you go up into the villages. And I guess it's like, how can we honor water, not just as a utility? I think this is the problem. We see it as a utility. It is a utility in most countries, right? But more as a sacred ally for our longevity in these times of planetary crisis. I mean, it's how do we make that shift globally, not just here in Bali?
It's a fascinating question, and I think you have to know who your market is. And in Bali, the cultural stuff really works. And so, I have a lot of Balinese friends and colleagues who they actually would prefer to use my filter because they don't like the idea of plastic. Again, and they're talking about microplastics. They still go to what they call the beji, which is the spring. They collect the water, and many of them still drink it directly because it's considered holy. It's the same water that we're piping up and going into our tap, which is full of coliform. It's not pure water. It's still disgusting and unsafe. But their beliefs around those holy springs are so strong that they drink it directly.
Yeah.
So then in Bali, we have an opportunity to kind of market the spiritual side of things, but in places like Jakarta, I mean, I'm sure through your podcast and your work, like you start to look at things like a carbon tax and green taxes, and how do you incentivize B2B and B2C to make better decisions? And you can only do that by if things are either scarce or they're more expensive. So there has to be an incentive somehow. And I think this is where Bali's talked about banning single-use plastic bottles. I don't think that would work, but I think if you taxed them, if you said, well, these are now 30% more expensive, people would stop buying them.
Yeah.
And they'd start to look for other solutions.
Absolutely.
But you're fighting against not the government, you're fighting against big multinationals that would never let that happen.